Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers have big expectations for the 2025 season. This is a team that expects to do some really exciting things on offense, and they're hoping that their defense can also step up to the plate and match that offense. The talent is there, and we're going to take a deep dive into the LSU Tigers to see what we should expect from this team in 2025. Now, last year, you saw some really exciting things, a 9-4 season did leave some concerns though. And when you go 9-4, a lot of teams will probably accept that. But at LSU, you have a higher level of expectations than a lot of programs. You have higher goals than I think a lot of people expect at most programs, and that just comes with the territory. Brian Kelly knows he has work to do, and he has a team that should be able to meet those expectations this year. When you look at the roster changes, the NFL obviously is always going to do a number on LSU's roster. When you play for the LSU Tigers, you expect to go to the NFL. If you're a fan of this team, you also expect plenty of turnover because of the NFL. So when you lose certain guys like Will Campbell, you lose Mason Taylor, Emory Jones. When you're looking at this roster, you expect guys to depart, and the guys that go to the NFL are the ones that you're mostly worried about replacing. Now, you do bring in some really interesting players to replace some of that talent. The wide receiver position is going to be one to keep an eye on. You bring in Barian Brown from Kentucky, you bring in Destin Hill from Florida State, Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. You also bring in a couple transfers on the offensive line. Josh Thompson from Northwestern, Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech. That's going to help this offense tremendously. The defense also brought in some really interesting transfers this year as well. Jack Pyburn comes in from Florida. You also see Bernard Gooden from South Florida, USF. Jamari Butler from Nebraska. We'll dive into more of these bigger names on the defensive side of the ball because there are a number of transfers that are going to start for this defense. And they are some really exciting names. And there's also a couple names that if they reach their potential, this defense could be much better than it was last year. The offense, though, is going to be the exciting part of this. As long as the passing attack does what it's capable of doing, which there really isn't any concerns about that happening, this is going to be an exciting group. And Garrett Nussmeier is going to lead the show. He is a guy that has extremely good talent at the quarterback position, great arm talent, the ability to make those big time throws to get his guys open. And he has a group of pass catchers that is going to make his life a lot easier. You do have some new faces, but overall, I think this is a group that expects to do a lot of exciting things. Nussmeier threw for 4,052 yards last year, 29 touchdowns. You obviously want to see him reduce his interceptions, increase those touchdowns. But if you're taking care of the football more, you will get those opportunities to add more touchdowns to your resume. And I think that's what everyone expects him to do. If he wants to raise his NFL draft stock, that is something that he will have to accomplish if he wants to be a better quarterback. And there are a lot of things to like about Garrett Nussmeier's game. I think that he, again, has that arm talent to be able to distribute the ball all over the field. He can make those short throws, the intermediate throws. He can take the top of the defense with his arm strength. And he has some players that should be able to take guys deep. And when you look at some of the talent that they have coming back, you have really one consistent, reliable player, and then you have a bunch of potential around him. If some of those guys can become more consistent, stay on the field, stay healthy, you feel like Garrett Nussmeier is set for an even bigger year, which is crazy considering he threw for 4,000 yards last season. So that is something that should be really exciting if you're an LSU fan. You look at what this offense is capable of doing, the passing attack is going to be a big part of that. Another thing that you did was you bring in Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State. He did a lot of really exciting things for a team that was not very good. And now you bring him to LSU to be the replacement for Garrett Nussmeier. Yes, there will be competition, but it feels like Michael Van Buren is the guy who is going to be in line for that next spot. And he'll be really fun to watch. I'm curious to see if this offense will have some packages for him, if they'll still utilize his skill set, or if they're truly just going to build towards the future. If Nussmeier is doing what he's capable of doing, there's really not a need to switch things up. But it never hurts to have a wrinkle in there as well, especially with what Van Buren can do with his legs. The rushing attack is probably the area you want to see improve the most, but at the same time, you feel confident that that can happen. Caden Durham took over last year as the starting running back and did a lot of exciting things. Ran 140 times for 753 yards and 6 touchdowns. He also caught 28 passes for 260 yards and 2 more scores. Now that he can be the full-time starter, it'll be fun to see what he's capable of doing. Now, he will have to do that behind some new faces on the offensive line. This is an offensive line with multiple new starters, and that might take some time for everybody to kind of get up to speed and get acclimated with each other, kind of get used to how the running lanes will develop and what he's capable of doing with that patience. If he has that patience to be able to hit the hole or let it develop up front, you feel pretty good about what this rushing attack can do. Freshman Harlan Berry could be another game to watch. They're really excited about him. They think that he has tremendous talent to be able to be part of this rotation. Caden Durham's not going to do it all by himself. They do need somebody that's going to be able to step up. Maybe that's Harlan Berry. Caleb Jackson should also be part of that. Maybe JT Lindsay. You have plenty of talent. When you're at LSU, you understand that there is a level of talent that you're going to resort to if you have it, and you feel like you have good depth because the ability to recruit at the level that you have. So when you have multiple guys at these positions, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that you've done your job recruiting, you brought in the right talent, and you brought a number of talented players that are going to push for starting time. And again, this rushing attack is going to dictate the balance of this offense. The passing attack appears to be set, even with some question marks. It's going to come down to the rushing attack. And maybe the rushing attack, maybe Caden Durham has to do a little bit more early in the season. Yes, Garrett Nussmeier is back. Yes, you have certain players that are returning, but it might take some time for those new guys to develop chemistry. So maybe the rushing attack does have to take over for a little bit, and overall, they're going to need that rushing attack in the end. Now, the passing attack, we talked about Garrett Nussmeier. We know that he is a big part of this, but the wide receivers will have to show that they can give him opportunities to make some of these throws, to give him wide open people. Now, you do return Aaron Anderson, who had a big year, the former Alabama transfer. We were kind of waiting to see what he could do, and last year he definitely delivered. 61 catches for 884 yards and 5 touchdowns. You also saw a guy in Chris Hilton Jr. show some flashes. 9 catches for 243 yards. That's 27 yards per catch and 3 touchdowns. If you go back and look at the bowl game against Baylor, you saw a guy who is definitely capable of being a big-time threat. But that wasn't all that this group has to offer. You have Xavier Thomas, who is going to take on a bigger role this year. 23 catches for him, 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. You also brought in a number of transfers. Barian Brown has tremendous speed. And when you talk about this wide receiver position for LSU, we've heard a number of things about this group. Speed is definitely one of them. Barian Brown is a blazing player. If he can become more of a refined route runner and a better wide receiver, he's only going to get better. For Kentucky, 29 catches last year for 361 yards and 3 touchdowns. You also bring in Destin Hill from Florida State, 6 catches for him, 87 yards. And the biggest X factor to me is Nick Anderson. Comes in from Oklahoma, and when he's healthy, he is one of the best wide receivers in college football. The problem is that he has struggled to stay healthy throughout his entire career. But again, this is a guy with good size, has the ability to stretch the defense, has the ability to take the top off the defense and put these defensive backs in really challenging positions. A guy who has the ability to make life easier for the rushing attack because the defense is worried so much about getting burned by him. But again, staying healthy. If LSU's strength and conditioning staff can figure out what's going wrong for him and they're able to give him a little bit more durability, I don't know what the solution is there. But keeping him on the field is going to be arguably the biggest thing for this group. Now, maybe the tight ends have to be part of that as well. You do have another freakish athlete in Trey'Dez Green. I think he is set for a big year. Bauer Sharp comes in from Oklahoma as well. He is going to be part of that. You also brought in Donovan Green from Texas A&M. So you have a number of options at the tight end position. And if the wide receivers need some time to sort things out, you do have some big targets for Garrett Nussmeier to find at tight end. So the passing attack is in good hands regardless of how things sort itself out. The offensive line is going through transition. That is going to take some time, and that could mean that Garrett Nussmeier needs to make some out-of-pocket plays. He means to escape the pocket, make some throws on the run. It could take some time, but also I think the staff feels pretty good about what they have returning as well as what they brought in. The 2 names that are going to be new from the portal, we talked about them before. Josh Thompson comes in from Northwestern, has 21 starts under his belt with the Wildcats, started 10 games last year. Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech, very similar situation. Played for Virginia Tech, did not have the success for a team that he wanted, goes in the portal, had plenty of options, and ultimately chooses LSU. 28 games, 24 career starts for him. Very experienced player, especially at that center position. He is going to work a ton with Garrett Nussmeier. That is going to be the biggest combination that has arguably the biggest impact on this offense and their success in 2025. The guard position is relatively set with Josh Thompson. Opposite of him is DJ Chester, the one returning starter to this offensive line, and he has some versatility with him. You can probably play him at center if you need to. He can also play guard. So having that flexibility gives you some additional depth, even if you're not confident in the guys behind Braylon Moore. Maybe you can shuffle guys around, but you have some experience that gives you that flexibility. Chester is one of those guys. Started all 13 games for this team in 2024 and learned a lot, because when you have Will Campbell, Emory Jones, Miles Frazier, you have plenty of experience that is going to allow guys to learn from those three guys and understand that these three went to the NFL. They have what it takes to compete, and Chester's going to get the rest of those new guys, whether it's coming in from the portal or they're just inexperienced, up to speed. The tackle positions are arguably the most inexperienced of these starters. Tyree Adams has 2 starts in his career. Weston Davis is also inexperienced, but you feel really good about their size. They're both 6'7", 310 pounds or more. I think that if you're looking at someone with a proven track record, LSU has been able to do really exciting things, and both of those guys got to learn from Campbell and Jones. I like that combination in terms of winning. Now, you do have some experience behind those guys. You do have some younger players that could step up as well. So it's just a matter of time before one of them is going to have to play. And it just is a matter of, is it those experienced guys, or are you going to put a new face into the rotation, into this starting lineup? But the starters feel like they're in a good spot. They have something to prove, and keeping Garrett Nussmeier upright while he learns the chemistry with his new targets downfield might be a question mark right now. The defense really has to step up. Right now, the offense has some questions and some things to sort out, but overall, you feel that there's a confidence within that group to be able to produce. The defense is going to have multiple new players, and we'll talk about a unique player that we're trying to figure out what he's going to be. An NFL talent that right now feels like he doesn't have a solidified position. The defensive line is really going to have success for this group to be good in 2025. To be able to get to the quarterback, be disruptive. That's why you bring in Jack Pyburn from Florida, 60 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack. You also have Patrick Payton, 35 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks at Florida State last year. Both of those guys, if they're able to continue their disruptive ways and play consistently, you feel really good about that. You also have Jamari Butler coming in from Nebraska, 22 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He will definitely push for starting time as well. Gabriel Relaford is another name to keep an eye on, especially on the edge positions. The defensive tackle position, honestly, is where you probably have the most questions. You do get Jacoby and Guillory back. He only played 2 games last year. I think having him back, assuming that he is fully healthy, is going to be a good piece to have. I think that he is a solid veteran to return to this group. Dominic McKinley steps into a bigger role, 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks last year. Really good production. You bring in Bernard Gooden from USF. They're really excited about him. 35 tackles, 10 tackles for loss for him. You have a number of other guys that could be part of this rotation. The interior defensive line might have the most questions right now, but when you look at these guys, they definitely have the talent to be successful. And that's a really exciting thing if you're an LSU fan. I think that there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic, even if you have some concerns about the production or what this group is actually capable of doing. The talent is definitely there, and it's just on this staff to get this team up to speed and to play at their potential. Now, the linebacker position is an interesting one. And in this day and age, a lot of teams are going to a 4-2-5, maybe a 3-3-5. But you're going to see a lot of different looks with defenses. Just like offenses can put different personnel on the field, the defense can do that as well. Now, the linebacker position is not going to feature I don't know how this is really actually going to work and how they're going to do it, but I do know that Whit Weeks is the solid player that they're going to rely on. A first team all SEC selection, 125 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Now, Harold Perkins could be part of this. I don't expect him to play linebacker solely as that only position. They could move him around. We're actually going to talk about him more a little bit later in the secondary. He's not a secondary player, but just bear with me on that. The linebacker position could be where we see him. You could see him on the edge. Harold Perkins is too talented to not have on the field, but I think right now I'm very curious to see how they're going to utilize him. So you have Whit Weeks. Davon Keys is someone who had a solid year for this team, deserves to be a part of that rotation as well. He's right now, I'm going to list him as the potential starter. Maybe West Weeks will also be part of that. But Harold Perkins is definitely going to be part of it. It'll just be how this staff wants to line him up. But the linebacker position overall is in good hands, even if Perkins plays there or not. So you're in a good spot with Keys and Weeks. You also have West Weeks and Tylen Singleton. So you have some good pieces behind them. And then after that, you're looking at some younger players to potentially step up. But again, the biggest question is going to be Harold Perkins. And we'll go to the secondary because, again, Harold Perkins is not a secondary player, but he's, for some people, they're putting him in this star position, which is like the nickel position, which doesn't have to be a defensive back. It can be a linebacker. And he is kind of that Swiss Army knife that they want to move around and see what he can do. He's too talented to not be on the field, and he deserves to play and make an impact. It's just a matter of what role will he fit the best. He's extremely athletic. He's extremely explosive. You just have to find ways to put him in successful positions. That's going to be the biggest question right now. Again, not a secondary player, but I'm just putting him here because he has that versatility. You can also see a secondary player like more of a nickelback be in this. If you need Perkins to play linebacker, which they will, he gives you the flexibility. And even though this is a question about where he's going to play, there's still a lot of exciting things that LSU can do with him in this defense. They can move him all over the field and see what he's capable of doing. The secondary does bring in a couple of really intriguing pieces. You have 4 transfers that are going to play a big role in this defense. AJ Halsey was a huge get for LSU's secondary. 74 tackles, 8 passes defended, 5 interceptions for Houston in 2024. This is a guy who was a big-time playmaker for the Cougs in the last couple of years, and now he is looking to take his talents to the SEC. He's proven that he can do it, and honestly, I'm surprised that Houston kept him for as long as they did. Manzur Delaney comes in from Virginia Tech, another guy who's very capable of picking passes off, getting the ball back to his offense, and with the offense that LSU possesses, you're looking at a guy who is going to have a huge impact on this team, and to be able to get the ball back to that explosive offense, giving them more opportunities is never a bad thing. The returning guys, Ashton Stamps had a big year. I don't think that's a guy that a lot of people were talking about. Had a big year, very productive for this secondary. Jordan Gilbert, same thing. I don't think a lot of people were really hyped over him, but I think more people knew him than Ashton Stamps. And now you know those two guys a little bit better. You also have 2 transfers in behind them that could be part of this rotation as well. Jakeem Jackson comes in from Florida at the cornerback position. You also have Tamarcus Cooley coming in from NC State. There are some younger players that will play a role in this rotation as well, but you saw a number of guys get some production for this secondary. So a guy like Javian Toviano, PJ Woodland, those are guys who saw significant time, but again, just because you had time doesn't mean that you're able to stay in the lineup. You're going to have to compete at LSU. And if you're not getting the job done, which some of these guys just didn't get the job done last year, you're going to bring in guys that will get the job done. They will make sure that they're successful, and they're going to push competition year in and year out. You will make sure you get the best out of your players. And Brian Kelly understands that. He understands that it's going to take competition for guys to improve. And especially with the first game of the season, it's going to require this group to be ready earlier than expected. And you can't wait for guys that are trying to figure it out, especially when you have to go to Clemson in week 1. And the Clemson game is going to be challenging. You're facing one of the better teams in college football, and this is a big time game for the college football playoff race. Now, you don't knock yourself out if you lose this game, but you do obviously still want to add that to your resume. Nobody really wants a quality loss despite what that really gives you. Nobody wants to lose these games. And that's the part I think I kind of get upset about, is that they say in this day and age, it's like the games don't matter. And it's like, okay, do you know what you're saying when you say the games don't matter? I think it's insulting to some of these kids who are putting in all this work to be competitors and to win football games, that people are just like, well, the game doesn't matter. I think it's just a very invalidating thing to say about some of these guys that are putting in work, that have put in hours upon hours of work to get to where they are. And you're just basically saying, well, who cares? Well, these kids care. Have you watched them play? Have you watched them compete? Watch LSU and Clemson in week 1 and tell me that this game doesn't matter. It's a really, I think it's a terrible statement to make. And LSU and Clemson are going to show exactly why. You do get a little bit of a break with Louisiana Tech, but then it's right back to business when you face Florida on September 13th. I don't like that they're playing this early in a way, but also it's going to be really exciting. That's a really fun game early on. You get another break before with Southeastern Louisiana, then you go to Ole Miss. You then get a bye week to start October before you play South Carolina. So the one thing is that LSU does have some tough games, but they get a game before it or a bye week before they have to face these tough teams. Not saying it's going to be easy to still win these games, but they at least get a little bit of a break. The second half, not as easy. You do have to go to Vanderbilt. That's a tougher game than expected. Texas A&M at home, that will also be tough. Another bye week before you go to Alabama. That's a huge one. And at the end of the season, we're going to know just how big it actually is, depending on what LSU's record is at this point. You then get Arkansas and Western Kentucky at home before you go to Oklahoma. We'll find out quickly if Oklahoma is truly a contender or if they're going to have an interim head coach by this time in the season. But there is plenty of opportunities for LSU to win football games. There are plenty of chances for them to build their resume, to strengthen their resume, and show exactly why they're one of the better teams in college football. There are some positions that need to sort things out. If Harold Perkins can definitely find his position on defense, if this staff finds the right place for him, it's up to Blake Baker to figure that out. I feel pretty good about that defense elevating their game. The offense should be in good hands. Again, if Nick Anderson stays healthy, I really like what this offense can do. I think he is a big time game changer, and he opens things up for the guys around him. He is the true number one threat that if he is realizing his potential and he's able to stay on the field, he's going to make everybody better. So this is a group that has plenty of excitement. There are some things to work on, but if everything puts itself together, this is going to be a really exciting team in 2025.